Now I will go into trends. I heard from the organizers of the webinar series that you will get over time more in-depth perspectives of different tools and very specific tools. So I will just show you kind of a menu, if you will, or a selection of different tools, and particularly not what was. As I said, let's say the past 10 years or 20 years have been devoted to establish a practice of single tools. So e-consultations, open data, websites, let's say even increasingly mobile applications that are enhancing sort of participation, e-voting and so on. Now the trend is towards more integrated tools. So integrating more different tools into, let's say, single platforms. And the reason why this is done is because there's simply more tools out there. But it's also to enhance and amplify the user experience. So we see that more and more tools are becoming more visual and are becoming more citizen-friendly, are becoming more interactive. So interactivity and user-friendliness in civic participation tools is one of the critical, let's say, basic building blocks that you want to ensure that your tool has when you're designing a new one. You know, there are various tools like, let's say, Fix My Street, or these kind of earlier tools that ask citizens, let's say, to take pictures and so, but we saw that there was not a lot of action there. You know, people ended up using it, but it was not generating the volume of participation that we would want. So what is now, with the luxury of time and that we have piloted and experimented with a lot of different tools, we learned in the process what is working, what's not working. And the integration of the different tools, we see that actually having just one tool out is not enough, that you need, you know, human beings are complex and they need different stimulation points to change behavior or to motivate them towards a behavioral outcome. So this is a kind of a long way to say that we see, again, the technology is responding to offline, let's say, psychological setup of citizens and political actors, where we're using technology to enhance behavior, to motivate people. Now, these are some examples. These are fairly simple, so we're starting with these e-democracy portals. This is very interesting because, as I said before, you would see cities would have had big headline. We launched an e-petitions instrument. Ooh, we launched video streaming of our local council meeting. I mean, let's say 10 years back, make no mistake, this was quite groundbreaking. You know, they were using mixed media, a video to show a meeting that before a citizen would not have access to. You saw what they talked about, how the local, let's say, councilmen and women behaved. And you could hear what they were actually discussing. This was, at that time, was quite novel. So even having a podcast of a council meeting was exciting. What you see now, as more of these tools, the cities, as they introduce more tools, are becoming more smart and are putting them into one feature. So for example, the city of Manchester, not super visually exciting content, but what's very interesting is the level of organization that they have put into this. They have e-surveys, they have e-elections, they have e-voting, they have know your councilmen and councilwomen. So they're organizing participatory or democratic-like content in one space on the website. Very interesting. This is, as I said, not visually super sophisticated, but the thinking process, the logic behind this, it's quite interesting. You see also, this is in the city of Madrid. They are going even more further. They have also, as you can see, they have a transparency portal. So they create a one umbrella portal, and under that portal they have links to other portals. Open data portal, participation, transparency portal. Another example of a city consolidating multiple instruments in one place. Kind of a e-democracy one-stop shop, if you will. this tool here is actually by a private NGO that is providing services. So it's very interesting that most of these, let's say, e-democracy tools have been for a long time, government supplied. So the government most of the time paid for it. I mean, they are costly, they do require some kind of onset investment. But now we are seeing NGOs and civil society and the private sector are catching up very fast. They see that there is also profitability in this, and are creating applications. This is a US-based application. It's called the LibNet. You can't see it very well, but... And what they do, they actually organize online consultations. They also have a budget simulator. So they are assisting with open budgeting initiatives that a city may have, because even cities, sometimes they may have the skills or not in-house, let's say council or any department as a matter of speaking, can have those types of people in-house to implement a tool or to come up, conceptualize a tool and then implement it. But they may not. So many times they outsource. They still want it, they need it, but they may not have the skill. So they outsource it, and this particular NGO has, or civil society organization, has created a clever way to provide such a service to local governments or any civil society organization, community. So also many times communities launching new community-based projects can, from their little community budget, can hire these guys and use their online tools that are already readily available, that these guys have created. So check it out, it's very interesting. I will not go into detail. So this is consultation, budget simulator, and organizing a discussion forum, a citizen discussion forum. This is a Swiss-based, this is from Switzerland. It's called Easy Vote. And unlike being, the government of Switzerland, we have quite a strong e-voting, let's say, practice in Switzerland at different level, at national and local level. And this website is, again, there is a general national website on e-voting, and within it you have a kind of a civic education mini portal to introduce people to the concept of e-voting. So here they integrate various tutorials, information about upcoming, let's say, elections, where they are held, how you use e-vote. So very interesting. This is again a very specific tool, but within the tool you have again multiple functionalities integrated to explain, make things more user-friendly to the user. So that's interesting. So this is one trend, is integrating tools and making them more user-specific, customized, and interesting. The next trend, or several trends, is this power of many-to-many, one-to-many that technologies are enabling us to do. It's communication and problem solving, and the general idea is that more minds put together are better than one or two. So this is this trying to get at this collective intelligence factor. This is becoming a very new, this co-creation of ideas. Before, experts tended to solve things. There is an emergence of a, let's say, a philosophy or trend that actually people, when they get together and the process is structured well, democratically, and everybody gets equal value and the dynamics are set right, they actually can come up with very interesting and creative solutions to everyday problems. Again, the technology comes to the rescue, because usually people can be in different places at different time, enable us with the different power of technology for all these people to come together. Before, you would need a public hearing or people to come into one room all at the same time to co-create or to come up with a solution. Now with technologies, you could do it maybe at night, you can pause certain things, you could see what people did at one point in time and add on to it. So again, it's co-creation, crowdsourcing, and also increasingly mobile democracy. We see increasing number of applications, and in fact, let's say, let's say, specialists or trend specialists saying that majority of things is going to go increasingly M. So it's not going to be E, it's going to be mobile enhanced. So this is something to watch out for. Now these are some examples. This is a very exciting example. I like it and I use it in different contexts. It's from Montenegro. And there what I would like to feature, it has many excellent participatory features as an example. What they did, it was a city of Podgorica, the capital city of Montenegro, that had launched an open data, let's say, initiative, civic initiative. But rather than, in addition to supplying open data, they also did one step further and they used citizens as data collectors. And how did they do that? They created a mobile application and they allowed citizens to go around the city to monitor public transgressions. By that it was defined by the city that it was either illegal parking, it was waste disposal, wrong waste disposal, or things that are actually formally finable, where you can get a public fine for. So the city provided these applications, the citizens used it, and they started to collect data. Within first month, actually it's 3 months, I don't want to go misinterpret the data, there was about 1,500 transgressions recorded that generated about 500,000 euros in fines to the city. Now what the city did, this was done by citizens through their mobile applications. Then the city took that money, it kept half of it, and half, 250,000, it gave back to the community to use for participatory budgeting. So you can see this is a combination, again, integration of different tools and also combining offline, online aspects. And the citizens, with the 250,000, created a lot of community projects. There was, I believe, a restoration of a city park where they re-landscaped the park to make it more beautiful. They provided equipment to rural, remote hospitals and kindergarten. Now, that's one example. The other example, it's creating a supportive ecosystem. This is again offline, online, but it's the living labs concept, that in communities, in addition to creating a lot of, let's say, innovation, or sometimes even to stimulate innovation, you create a space where people come through from multiple disciplines to co-create solutions, be it online or offline. So this is a very interesting thing that is very much linked. It's not necessarily online, part of it is online, but it's also offline. That is part of the, let's say, e-democracy community, where you see a lot of interesting solutions coming from these living labs. Civic hacks are very interesting, where the government is using the IT community to come up with better solutions for its services. So a regular hackathon would maybe, let's say, or typical hackathon would tend to create technologies for more commercial uses, for profitable uses, sometimes for public. But civic hacks are specifically government asking the hacking community or IT community to help make government solutions better. The White House used civic hacks very effectively on its open data platform. It released a whole bunch of data, especially in the context of e-petitions, and asked the IT community to come and to create a lot of different improvements to its e-petitions instruments. There are, I think, over 200 different applications that came out from that. It's on the White House website. Check it out. It's very interesting. And as I said, there's M Technologies. The third trend that is coming up is gamification. Gamification and increasingly creating visual interactive content for the user, for the citizens, even in government settings. So it's not only on, let's say, private games, you know, but it's also in government citizen interaction. These are some examples. This is very kind of cute examples, if you will. It's an example from Switzerland, from the city of Zurich. It has a very active open data portal where it released a lot of city-level data. And one of the data sets, or several data sets, were integrated into this game for children to teach them about ecology and natural aspects, environmental aspects in the city. What it does, it created a cartoon character, this worm, that goes actually through the city in real time through GPS positioning, through mobile application, and you can actually learn about different trees in real time, in real space, as you're going through the city. That's very interesting. Again, combination open data, gamification for enhanced and educational purpose for children. You have quite a lot of applications emerging in urban planning situations, where or participatory budgeting, where the experience is enhanced by putting certain information online, either voting for projects, as I said earlier, or increasingly visualizing what certain proposed projects would look like, or mapping projects online. So for example, this is in Italy, in the city of Bologna, where each of these points, it was done through participatory urban planning approach, offline and online, and then they visualized it, and each of these dots is a different type of a project with different information and process. It is done by citizens and the city in a collaborative space. And this is Dublin's dashboard, open data dashboard. While there's more and more of these at the city level, what I like particularly about this one, that is question driven. Rather than putting a whole bunch of data unstructured or in very simple categories that are usually very vague, like let's say ecology. So you will have 300 data sets, on ecology. Dublin goes one step forward, and it asks questions that are interesting for the community. And then it answers them through visualized data that it has released through the open data portal. Very interesting, nice practice, not super complicated, but a nice linkage of thought process or design factors, if you will, that they go already one step further to ask, what may citizens be already interested in? What kind of questions are we as a community interested in to answer about our city? And they're using the power of technology and data to illustrate that to the public. Lastly, I will conclude to look at some challenges. Although new technologies are really exciting, and I said that they're increasingly becoming more innovative, there is some challenges also involved that you should think about when you're going to be implementing or choosing tools that you will work with. One is the speed of things and instantaneousness. Every time you create a tool, you will have users, hopefully. And those users will want things. They will want things fast. One thing, when I was doing my research and I was talking to politicians, if they're using, whether they're using technologies for reaching out to citizens and collaborate with citizens, I did some research on that. There were those that didn't, and many of them were very interested actually in the use of technologies, but they either said that they tried them and they it didn't necessarily meet their expectations, or when they did, they said it brought a lot of new pressures, where citizens wanted things very fast. Many times the things that citizens wanted were not realistic. They were not in a budget context, or they were not in a time context. And they wanted very fast responses. So even parliamentarians, when they put chat functions on their websites, which I have talked to such parliamentarians, they have experimented with such applications. They wanted to be closer to the citizens, so they said, oh, I would like to introduce a chat forum. They said that citizens wanted things very fast, and they were not so ready or didn't have the resources to respond. So there is a speed of things that many times brings new pressure, whether you are a parliamentarian or a civil society organization, that one should be thinking about. It's the new tools aspect, that as soon as we end up using and getting grasp of one tool, there is so many new more on the market. How do we deal with that? This is something for us as a society that we will have to deal with it. There is some obviously opportunities and also some dangers in that, where we will not always be able to learn adequately from some tools, which is necessary given the speed of things again. And this is one of maybe most powerful or common and easy to fix is this, what I call this e-gimmick seductions. Again, people hearing something somewhere or reading about some exciting new piece of technology and said, I want to do it. Without thinking why, or do I really, to what effect, do I have the proper staff or the team or resources? Why it's great if people are motivated to use new technologies. It's always important to do outcome-based use of technologies, meaning thinking very consciously, why do I want to use a tool? So as a result of this, let's say, lack of thought process in launching tools, many times tools can be misdesigned and they don't get the intended effect. And oftentimes people get very disappointed. So they had very big motivation, they used it, and then they ended up not getting what they expected. This can be helped and prevented the more thought one puts into a design of a tool and setup of a tool. And this would be actually a webinar on itself. How can one design tools and the types of thinking processes that should go into, let's say, setting up and using tools. It doesn't matter whether it's e-consultation, whether it's e-petitions, if as a city you are designing it, or an integrated discussion forum for participatory budgeting process, or an integrated platform, for example, for participatory budgeting. What kind of features should you put on it? Why should you use it? What can you expect in terms of users? What will you get as responses, and how will you respond to those responses? So this is very important things to think about. Another challenge is often, namely from government, it's institutional skepticism, government not being always willing to use, and lack of political will. And some other thing is the digital divide. Still, this is increasingly decreasing because of higher internet penetration, and the cost of computers and mobile phones is becoming lower, so people have more access to them, even people who are not, don't have that level of income. It's becoming cheaper. So this is a positive thing, where 10 years ago the cost of computer was much higher. Hence it did not allow certain people who didn't have the income to afford it, which limited people's participation. So also when thinking about it, thinking about tools, think about the digital divide aspect. These are some lessons learned again. I will go fast through it. Good design, think about design. It's even if you import a tool, you can always adapt it, add features to it, or create online, offline. From research over and over again, the more experience we get, we see that the most powerful impact that is gained is when offline and online tools are combined. It means that face-to-face processes are used in parallel or in connection to technologies and vice versa. So for example, participatory budgeting is an excellent, having some face-to-face meeting, putting certain functions online, then regrouping again in a face-to-face meeting, and to get that also human connection, as well as some practical functionalities, ranking, decision-making, and let's say data aggregation is done online. So think about this, but we see for sure that people are much more likely to engage, and the outcomes and impact is much more powerful when these two aspects are combined. Back office and the team is just as important as interface. Many people get excited about putting a website on, but typically behind the website are people that need to manage the inputs. Classic examples is e-consultations. Many times government launches e-consultation mechanisms, generates a lot of input, and then what? How do you then sort through the input and make it into some kind of meaningful result? So this is again something in the design factor. You need the support staff to actually think about, not only to generate input, but what will you do with the input in the back office, and how will you get information back to the citizen? This requires resources. Co-creation and new skill sets, build ecosystems, so create partnerships. The use of technology is increasingly, we see it requires designers, it requires young ITers, it requires also experienced civic activists to connect with the civic activist part. It requires a group of people to co-create solutions. And we also see from research and analytics that multidisciplinary teams tend to create much better solutions or more powerful solutions than, let's say, just tech teams. Because again, there's a civic component and a human component. Role of media in use of e-democracy, it's very critical, mass media, to use it for advertising, because many times people build tools and they don't get the users. So how do you get the users? So power, still using conventional power of advertising is very important, especially when the tool is new and it's a new concept. You need to get people on board, and classical advertisement, almost private sector, let's say marketing strategies are very useful. And media, obviously with outreach to the public, is very useful. This is proven also over and over again. And think about e-inclusion. So that's about all for me. Maybe Ukraine, very exciting. It's picking up, the agenda is picking up. You have huge human capital in the country, in the IT sector, which you should definitely use for social innovation as well as corporate innovation and tech innovation and bio-innovation. But it also should be used for civic and social innovation. And I think there's a momentum building in Ukraine where we see that e-democracy is gaining ground. And these are some of the some questions for you to think about. Which examples did you like from the presentations, or maybe even from other experiences? And then ask yourselves why. Why is something interesting? Why is a tool interesting? Then can you think of some Ukrainian examples that you saw that worked well, and things that don't work well? And again, ask yourself why, because usually that enables learning, which you can factor into design processes. And if access to resources, if you had the time, the money, and the team to do it, what tool would you design? Think about that. So be creative, be socially conscious, be in tune with your community, and definitely use IT as an enhancer to assist democracy and to make it stronger in Ukraine. Thank you very much.